The Imperial Palace's grand hall was bathed in the soft glow of holographic protocols. I stood before the central command console, my fingers hovering over the sleek black surface. The console hummed with an urgent message about protocol compliance. "Okay," the rule whispered as I activated it. The terminal hummed to life, displaying a matrix of colored nodes, representing various sectors of Coruscant and beyond. A faint beep interrupted my concentration. And adapted my concentration. A message from General Thorne, my superior, flashed across the screen. "What's your progress, Administrator Voss?" I asked about the status of the lockdown. I tapped out a brief response. Sector 17, lockdown confirmed. No abnormalities reported in communications. Thorne's reply was immediate and curt. "Good work. Maintain vigilance." And I hate to tell it out. Rank continues. Report any changes. Find it out. Authoritarian kill. National advertise. The console flickered slightly as I saved the message. My eyes drifted to the large, imposing figure of General Thorne, standing at a nearby desk, his stern expression making it clear that he expected perfection. I sighed, returning my attention to the screen. The protocol had worked. Sector 17 was secure. But something gnawed at me, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It felt like there was more to the process than what the protocol revealed. Revealed. Suddenly, a shadow crossed the hall. Niwu, a young technician, rushed past, his expression frantic. He glanced over his shoulder and whispered urgently, "Admin Voss, you need to see this." I followed him down a narrow corridor lined with security screens. The air grew thick with tension as we approached the central security station. There, on one of the monitors, an anomaly flashed red. A data stream from Sector 18 was showing signs of unauthorized access attempts. My heart raced. Russian protocol had been bypassed. Someone or something was trying to breach the system. Who's accessing it? I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. The technician pointed at a series of unfamiliar codes scrolling across the screen. Itons not recognized. Something new. Where energy output? I leaned in closer, recognizing the patterns as part of a recently installed security override. Backdoor designed for rapid deployment, but never intended to be used. Someone had found it and was now exploiting it. "General Thorne," I called out, my voice urgent. "We have an intrusion. Immediate action required." Thorne appeared beside me, his eyes narrowing at the screen. "What's the nature of this breach?" I explained the situation as quickly as possible. "Someone is using a backdoor we never intended to activate. We need to identify and neutralize it before I could finish, Thorne's hand clamped down on my shoulder, his grip firm. "Understand this," he growled. "Any failure at this level will be dealt with severely." His warning hung in the air as we watched the data stream flicker and then go black. The threat was contained for now, but the backdoor remained a glaring vulnerability. As I turned to leave, Thorne's voice echoed behind me. "Remember, Voss, in the Empire, failure is not an option." I walked away, my mind racing with questions and uncertainties. Was this breach just the tip of the iceberg? What else was out there, waiting to be discovered? My staring temper, I'm counting on. Ignored the dark shake me, waiting to be discovered. The hall was silent as I resumed my post, but a chill settled over me. The Empire's control might seem ironclad, but hidden cracks were always present. And who knew what dark secrets lay beneath those seemingly impenetrable walls? The Imperial Palace looms in the distance, its towering spires piercing the cloudless sky. All citizens must salute the Imperial ensign when entering any public building, a simple yet ubiquitous protocol in the Galactic Empire. I passed through the grand entrance of the Senate building, my hand automatically rising to salute the ensign hanging high above the door. A guard notices and gives me a sharp look before nodding his approval. The Emperor's eyes are everywhere, always watching. The rule is clear. Compliance ensures safety. Dissent leads to retribution. I step into the elevator, the doors sliding shut with a hiss as I press the button for the administrative floor. The lift descends slowly, and my mind drifts back to the last time this protocol failed. A minor clerk refused to salute an ensign. In publico, no hiss vanished without trace. The elevator dims, and I exit into the dimly lit hall. The rule bites. Failure means disappearances, torture, or worse. I step into the corridor, my footsteps echoing with each uncertain stride. Boss steps into Sector 17's dimly lit control room, her reflection in the holoscreen distorting under flickering lights. Boss methodically examines the console logs for signs of the unauthorized access. Her eyes narrow as she spots a peculiar pattern of keystrokes are familiar yet wrong. In the Empire, protocols are not just guidelines but lifelines to survival. Ignoring them is suicide. A sudden sharp alarm sounds, cutting through her focus. The command console flickers with an error message. Sector 18, lockdown bypassed. Boss's breath catches as she realizes the technician's warning was too late. She rushes to the comm panel, her fingers flying over the controls as she issues emergency commands. Isolating Sector 18, she mutters, trying to buy time. But the screen goes black, and a holographic voice crackles over the intercom. Attention all personnel in Sector 18. Report immediately to your designated holding cells. Boss's heart races as she frantically searches for Thornar's contact on her datapad. General, she stammers into the comlink. We have a breach in Sector 18. I need an override code now. Thornar's voice comes through, calm but urgent. Copy that, boss. I'm on it. As Voss waits for Thorn's response, her gaze wanders to the large imposing figure of the Emperor Enforcer standing just beyond the glass wall. His presence is a constant reminder of the price she might pay if this breach is not contained. The Enforcer watches her with unblinking eyes, his cold stare making Voss shiver, wondering if he knows more than he lets on. Voss's hand hovers over the console, fingers trembling as she prepares to override. Voss's eyes scan the holographic displays, each sector glowing green or red. Sector 18 is flashing with unauthorized access attempts, a pulse of urgency in her chest. In the Imperial Palace, every emergency is an opportunity for the Emperor's Enforcer to assert his presence. The Enforcer's imposing form looms behind Voss, his eyes piercing as he whispers, "Failure will not be tolerated." Voss types rapidly, fingers dancing over the console. She must find Thorn's override code before the breach is detected by security protocols. Only authorized personnel may use backdoors. Their existence is a closely guarded secret to prevent unauthorized access. A sudden alarm rings through the hall, signaling the activation of Sector 18's lockdown. Nice stone. Voss knows. She is seconds. She dials into Thornar's secure channel, her voice urgent as she demands the override code. "General, you need to give me access now." "No." General Thorn's overrides are the last line of defense against internal threats in Sector 18. The Enforcer steps closer, his presence a living reminder of the Emperor's vigilance. Voss feels a bead of sweat form on her brow as she waits for the code. Finally, Thorn's voice crackles through the channel. "Access granted," he says tersely. But no dissel. Failure is not an option. Voss races to activate the override, her hands shaking as she enters the code. The breach is sealed, just before security protocols detect it. But as the system stabilizes, Voss can't shake the feeling that the Enforcer's eyes are still on her, waiting for a moment of weakness. Voss's breath fogging her helmet as she frantically types commands. Microscene 1. Voss's fingers fly across the console, trying to activate General Thornar's override code. The screen flickers with each unsuccessful attempt. In the Imperial Palace, every sector has a unique access protocol that must be followed meticulously. Consequence Microscene 2. A sudden alarm wails through the hall as the unauthorized access attempts in Sector 18 grow more frequent and persistent. Boss turns to see General Thorn looming behind her, his imposing presence casting long shadows on the console. Microscene 3. With a sense of dread, Boss realizes she has only minutes left before the Enforcer demands results. She swallows hard, focusing all her energy on the console. The screen blinks, and a message pops up. Thorn override code required. Boss's heart races as she searches her memory for Thorn's code, knowing that failure means severe consequences. The Enforcer's eyes narrow, his breath hot on Boss's neck. She types the last digit, fingers shaking, as the Emperor's Enforcer watches with cold, unblinking precision. Boss's knuckles turn white as she grips the console. Boss's fingers dance over the keys with desperate efficiency, her breath coming in short bursts. An urgent prompt, demanding Thorn's override code, flashes before her eyes. In the Imperial Palace, every command issued must be logged by a subordinate to prevent unauthorized actions being traced back to higher-ups. General Thorn's voice rumbles behind her, low and menacing. Boss, you have 5 seconds. His presence is a physical barrier, blocking her from any escape or backup. The screen flickers momentarily as Boss's heart pounds in her ears. Boss's eyes widen as the console's power begins to falter, the monitor dimming and the keyboard keys stalling under her frantic fingers. She curses silently, knowing that even a momentary lapse could be catastrophic. The Enforcer's shadow looms larger, his presence a stark reminder of the unyielding iron grip of Imperial control. Boss stood before the massive console, her fingers dancing over the holographic keys. The Imperial emblem hovered above, casting an ominous glow around the room. She had 3 minutes left to override the system and extend Thornar's deadline. Protocol. All overrides must be logged within 5 minutes of activation. The clock ticked louder in the silence of the control center. Boss's heart pounded as she typed the final sequence of commands, her mind racing with what would happen if this failed. The terminal beeped softly, confirming the override was successful. She leaned back, relief washing over her momentarily. Failure to extend Thornar's deadline could result in immediate execution. Just then, a series of urgent alerts began to sound from various corners of the palace. Boss's eyes widened as she turned to see General Thorn's aide, Captain Rendau, storming into the room. His presence was unmistakable. His cold, calculating gaze made the hair on the back of her neck stand. "Boss," he barked, "why is not this extended yet?" She swallowed hard, trying to keep calm. "I am working on it, sir." The override just went through. Renderar's expression did not soften. Verified. The log immediately. A delay means a direct report to Emperor Palpatine. Boss nodded, her fingers already flying over the keys again. Nah. She had to ensure there was no trace of this operation, no evidence that she had extended Thornar's deadline beyond the permissible limits. The logs must reflect only what the protocol allowed. Every command must be logged within 5 minutes. The terminal beeped again, signaling a new log entry. Boss typed out the necessary data with deliberate slowness, her mind racing. She could not afford any mistakes now. Wow. If Thorn discovered she had tampered with the logs, her position would crumble. and a baptism combined. Captain Rendar stood behind her, his presence almost palpable. "Take your time," he growled, "but do not take too long." Ross finished typing and hit save. The log entry confirmed the override was logged within the required time frame. She exhaled deeply, but the relief was short-lived as she saw Rendar's stern nod. "Good work," he said gruffly before turning to leave. "Make sure it stays that way." My nature to nature, but a meter and don't much stow." As soon as he left, Ross let out a shaky breath. And the danger was not over. There were always more layers of control within the Empire. She needed to ensure her actions went unnoticed, but she knew that wouldn't last forever. What would happen if Thorn discovered the true extent of her involvement? Ross's fingers flew over the console as she entered the final digits of the override code. Captain Rendar's sharp eyes never left her screen. The protocol states, all overrides must be logged within 5 minutes to avoid detection. A sudden chime interrupted Ross, as she glanced up to see Rendar's expression darken. She knew this was a critical moment. Any delay could jeopardize the operation. With shaking hands, she completed the log entry just as the timer expired. The terminal confirmed. Override logged successfully within 5 minutes. Rendar spoke tersely, his words cutting like a knife. "You're lucky today, Ross," he said coldly. "I'm wish don't contain us, but this is not over. When I wrote that here, then sure 91, I must have no kind of throw." Ross swallowed hard, her mind racing with the implications of his comment. Now, she had been given a narrow window to complete the override without detection. Now she realized that any further error could result in immediate exposure and severe punishment. Alerts flashed urgently on the screen, demanding her attention with each passing second. Ross turned back to the console, her focus returning to the task at hand. She knew that failing to maintain composure or make a mistake would only exacerbate the situation. "I'm done zero, now in relax." General Thorne's deadline was looming, and every moment of hesitation could cost them everything. As she stared down at the code again, Ross felt a wave of fear wash over her. The pressure mounted, and she knew there was no room for error. "Words would improve about Peniel, and I should go cut make a dark historic, and obstinate type payment, and a servant." With a deep breath, Ross began to type furiously, her mind racing through the remaining steps. She had to stay focused. Any moment now, Rendar might notice another misstep. The terminal beeped again, signaling a new alert. Ross's heart sank as she realized that time was running out faster than she could process. General Thorne's voice echoed in her head. "Failure is not an option." With the last digit entered, Ross hit send and leaned back, watching the confirmation message scroll across the screen. The terminal beeped one final time, signaling the operation as completion, but as she turned to Rendar, she could see his face harden even more. "Let's hope this works," he growled, his eyes never leaving hers. "Or you're going straight to the Grand Inquisitor." "How?" Ross nodded silently, her thoughts turning to the impending challenges. The stakes were higher than ever, and every decision now mattered critically. She knew that General Thorne's trust was tenuous. Any failure could be disastrous. As she left the console room, Ross couldn't shake the feeling of impending doom. The Galactic Empire's iron grip on control was unbreakable, but at what cost? Ross's fingers danced over the console as the Imperial Palace's red alerts flash ominously. Micro Scene 1. Ross works frantically, her breaths growing shallow and quick. The terminal screen flickers with each keystroke, confirming the log entries, but not quelling the constant beeping of alarms. Every command must be logged within 5 minutes, or protocols trigger an automatic review by General Thorne's oversight team. Micro Scene 2. Captain Rendar leans closer, his expression a mix of concern and impatience. "We only have 3 minutes left," he hisses softly, his voice barely above a whisper to avoid the audio logs. Boss's hand trembles slightly as she types the final command. The terminal screen goes blank, but the red alerts continue to flash, growing more insistent with each passing second. If this fails, General Thorne will know exactly who oversaw the breach, and there is no going back. Bossa, fingers danced over the console, each keystroke a desperate prayer. The terminal screen flickered with red warnings. Alarms blared in sync with her pounding heart. Emergency command, logged, must be perfect. She typed faster, eyes skimming the code to ensure every character was correct. Rendar leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. Hurry, he murmured. The hierarch getting closer. My messenger, I didn't go. The terminal beeped once more, completing another log entry. Boss pressed on, adrenaline fueling her speed. Alarms blared louder as seconds ticked by, heightening the urgency. Suddenly, a new message popped up. General Thorne's oversight team detected anomaly in Protocol 7018-24. Wasatch's hands stilled as realization dawned. She had made a mistake. Something slipped through her frantic fingers. Panic surged, threatening to overwhelm her. Rendar noticed the pause, and his eyes narrowed. Finish it, he urged, his voice barely above a whisper. We can fix this. But Voss knew there was no time for fixes. The new message flashed again. Anomaly confirmed, initiating security protocols. She hit enter on the remaining code, her fingers trembling. The terminal acknowledged, and the screen went dark. Silence followed, heavy with tension. What now? Now? Voss turned to Rendar, dread pooling in her stomach. We made a mistake, she admitted, voice barely audible. They're coming for us. No, dear. When the Jabrains and her battery coming. But us said that killed. Voss's fingers flew across the terminal as alarms blared in the Imperial Palace. 2 minutes left. Rendar growled, his eyes never leaving her. Moistery. A protocol error had been detected. Security protocols were about to engage. She hit the final command and breathed a sigh of relief as the terminal beeped tar. Confirmation of the override log within the 5-minute limit. But just as she thought they were in the clear, a red alert flashed on the screen. Protocol override detected, it barked. The protocol had automatically flagged her entry because it was made under high-stress conditions. Rendar's face hardened. Rendar's face hardened. We have to move faster, he hissed. The oversight team will be here any minute. Boss's heart pounded as she checked the time. 2 minutes remained before General Thorne noticed their error. A full-scale investigation loomed, with every keystroke scrutinized and the potential for career-ending exposure. Suddenly, Rendar grabbed Voss by the arm, pulling her towards the door. We need to get out of here, he said urgently. Now. No. She didn't argue. She just followed him through the labyrinthine halls of the palace. Western said. Every step echoed with the urgency of their situation. They sprinted down a corridor, avoiding guards and other officials who were all too aware of the ongoing crisis. They burst into a private chamber, used for high-level meetings, Voss's breath coming in short gasps. Rendar slammed the door behind them and fumbled with a panel on the wall, revealing a hidden cache of weapons and supplies. Get ready, he said, his voice low but urgent. Voss grabbed a blaster from the stash, her hands trembling slightly as she aimed it at the door. She knew they were not out of danger yet. General Thorne's team was bound to come looking for them any moment now. They needed to be ready to defend themselves or face capture and severe consequences. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder outside the chamber. Voss's pulse raced as she waited, her mind racing with the possibilities. What would happen if they were caught? How could they have prevented this? Would their failure mean an end to all they had worked for? And then, a sudden explosion rocked the palace, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps on the other side of the door. Voss and Rendar exchanged a worried glance, unsure of what awaited them on the other side of the door. The unanswered question hung in the air. Would their actions today have saved them or doomed them forever? The dim light flickered across Voss's gaunt face as he held Rendar's hand. The walls of their hidden chamber hummed with the distant hum of Imperial machinery. Protocol: Alpha 9 dictates all personnel reports to their designated stations. Thonars. Heavy boots echoed closer, and the door began to creak open. Voss gripped his blaster tighter, ready for any sign of betrayal from within their own ranks. Rendar whispered, "Arena, never find us here." But a single Imperial officer entered, followed by two others. They glanced around, but did not search further. "I'm going to sit down now, mind." The officer nodded at Thorn, and left, the door closing quietly behind him. "Much surrender, and it actually don't make sound, and a breezy man down, and waits. Failure to comply with protocol. Alpha 9 will result in immediate disciplinary action." Thorn stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. "Oh, you were right about the Alliance base," he said, voice low. "However, we underestimated their patience." Nisha's sunrise, might pin content, might end up and start patience. Arundel stiffened beside Voss, knowing they had been discovered. The Imperial Officer R's absence meant General Thorn was prepared to deal with them himself. Why now? Now, Rendar asked. "Elster too, and Server Tippendal, Tanvacher went archation." Thornell's expression hardened. "Our Eritis is about efficiency. Right out Winster, and I think the good darling current, Narration Valley can the new get the marching of knowing. We need speed and precision. We need to act now. We can't hide forever on." He stepped closer, his presence imposing in the cramped space. Voss tightened his grip on the blaster, willing his nerves to calm. "We won't go down without a fight," he said, firmly. Thornon's eyes narrowed. "Earthen, you will learn the meaning of resistance," he growled, stepping even nearer. He reached into his pocket and produced a small device, pressing it against Voss's throat. The cold metal of the device pressed hard enough to cause a shiver. Protocol: Alpha 9 mandates swift execution for traitors." A sudden noise from outside drew their attention. Heavy machinery rumbled closer, and the door began to shake under the force of Imperial assault. Rendar gasped, his grip on Vossar's hand tightening. Thorn smirked. Eritis is how it ends." He pressed the device harder against Voss's skin, a warning that lingered in the air. The chamber shook, as the door finally gave way, splintering and collapsing inward. Imperial soldiers spilled in, weapons raised. Voss turned to Rendar one last time, his eyes filled with determination and fear. "I stay strong," he whispered before the blaster fire erupted around them. The unanswered question was, would anyone survive this encounter? A shadowy figure, with a blaster holstered behind their back, steps into a dimly lit corridor. "And the end were bent, and its touchscreen basically, and it's in probably like corridor." I crouch low as heavy footsteps echo outside, growing ever closer. Rendar's breath comes in quick gasps beside me. "I can't check out. One sure I'll stand." The chamber is just a small alcove, barely concealing us from the storm of boots and blaster fire raging beyond. I feel his fear through our shared space, the tension almost palpable. Protocol Alpha 9 states that all traitors must be identified and neutralized immediately upon capture. My arm is gripped tightly by Thorn, as he whispers, "You betrayed us. What do you think will happen?" Rendar and I were just silence. Thorn growls, his eyes narrowing. No excuses now. What doing right? No, why didn't we? A burst of gunfire rips through the corridor outside, followed by a thud that sounds suspiciously like someone falling. Panic surges in me, but Rendar's hand finds mine, steadying both of us. The footsteps retreat, leaving an eerie silence. Thorn glances at his comlink, then back to Voss and I. We have to move, he says, his voice low and urgent. We scurry across the chamber, ducking behind a large crate, just as another burst of blaster fire rings out. Rendar's face is pale, eyes wide with dread. Rendar braces himself for the inevitable. Swift execution for traitors. Thorna's team finds our hiding spot and begins to search the area methodically. Well, the chamber is small, with no place to hide or escape. Every moment feels like an eternity, as we wait for them to find us. What if they already know who I am? Or worse, what if Rendar's presence here will seal my fate? Voss crouches, her breath shallow as Rendar clutches his side. Microscene 1. The heavy footsteps grow louder outside, closer and more deliberate. Voss hears Thorn's voice, barking orders in the corridor. Rendar knows time is against him, as the protocol demands quick action for traitors. Rendar shifts uncomfortably, his hands trembling as he checks his blaster. I know. The sound of a boot scuffing against metal echoes through the chamber, making Voss's heart pound. Mention about Ben, you would say tonight. And they are discovered. Nation Maywell, Nogster, Nighthal. Will they survive this ambush? Or will Protocol, Alpha 9, claim another victim? Voss peeks through a crack in the crate, watching heavy boots march past. Voss and Rendar hold their breath as Thorn's team sweeps the chamber. Protocol, Alpha 9, mandates swift execution for traitors. Any moment could be their last. Rendar whispers urgently, "What if they find us?" Voss shushes him, fingers trembling on her blaster. "You're right." The footsteps grow fainter, then disappear. Relief washes over them, but it ends short-lived as the door bursts open with a loud crash. A stormtrooper stands in the doorway, rifle at the ready. "Drop your weapons," he barks, voice echoing off the walls. Voss and Rendar exchange terrified glances. Rendar quickly pockets his weapon, but Voss hesitates, her heart pounding. She decides to keep hers hidden. A chance remains to fight back. Thorn steps into the chamber, gun trained on Voss state. "You traitor," he snarls, advancing menacingly. While Voss's mind races. Protocol Alpha 9 dictates immediate neutralization of traitors. She must act fast before they realize her secrets. But how? All right, Voss stammers, dropping to one knee. "Just don't hurt me." Thorn leans in close, his breath cold against her ear. "You betrayed the Empire," he sneers. "I didn't, I swear, and I won't interact you." Voss pleads, hoping her bluff holds. Thorn snatches her up by the collar, dragging her out of the chamber. "Litars find out," he growls, leading her down a corridor. The corridor is lined with guards and troopers, all moving methodically. Protocol, Alpha 9, demands swift execution for traitors. Voss knows she has only moments to turn this around. Voss's gaze flickers to Rendar, who stands motionless in the doorway, weapon still hidden. "Rendar," she whispers urgently. "Help me." Rendar hesitates, then nods slightly. He quickly retrieves his blaster and follows behind them, keeping out of sight. They reach a large room, where a meeting is underway. Voss can see several high-ranking officers discussing strategy. Thorn shoves her in front of them, causing the room to fall silent. "General," one officer says, "what art is this about?" Thorn glares at Voss. "Indo, She's been feeding information to the rebels, he accuses, his voice low and menacing. Voss swallows hard, realizing they have only moments before their cover is blown completely. She needs to act fast. She cannot let Thorn execute her here. Sir, Voss begins, trying to keep her voice steady. I didn't betray the Empire. I was undercover. The room erupts in confusion and skepticism. Well, Protocol Alpha 9 mandates swift execution for traitors. Vossar's fate hangs by a thread. Suddenly, Rendar steps forward from behind a pillar, drawing his blaster. He aims at Thorn, his eyes cold and determined. She's telling the truth, he says evenly. I ordered her out. The room falls into stunned silence as everyone turns to face him. Voss takes this moment to slip away, moving towards an unguarded door leading to another chamber. Rendar, she whispers urgently. Go now. Before Thorn can react, Rendar sprints down the corridor, leaving behind a trail of confusion and tension. Voss slips into the adjacent room and shuts the door silently. She has to find a way out before they realize their mistake. But as she turns around, she sees that the room is empty, except for one thing, a small panel on the wall. She reaches out, touching the panel. It hisses softly and reveals a hidden passage. Vossar's heart races. This could be her only chance to escape. Right in the jungle chat and token account call. I took an advantage for state. As she slides through the narrow opening, she hears footsteps approaching outside. Protocol Alpha 9 demands swift execution for traitors. Voss knows that if they find her now, it will be too late. The unseen hand of fate closes in on her, and she must act fast before everything is lost. A shadow flickers across the dim corridor as Voss squeezes through the hidden passage. Rendar races behind her, his heart pounding in his chest. Protocol Alpha 9 mandates swift execution for traitors. Heavy boots thud against the metallic floor outside their chamber. Voss and Rendaros. Breaths are visible in the chill air. Not ancient missions. Footsteps approach urgently in the cold air. Voss's fingers tremble as she fumbles with a hidden switch on the wall. With a hiss, the passage seals behind her, trapping them both inside. Silence descends, but it is quickly shattered by the sound of Thornar's voice barking orders outside. Clear, Rendar nods. Rendar shouts, trying to stall for time. He runs back towards Voss, hoping she's found something, anything near, that could help them escape this trap. The sealed chamber denies Voss and Rendar any exit route. Rendar ducks behind a large crate, pulling out a blaster from his belt. We can't just wait here, he whispers urgently. There must be another way. Must be another way. Voss nods, her mind racing. Round. She glances around the small space, eyes landing on a control panel near the entrance. Or if we can shut down the security. Feed to this area, maybe that'll. Search elsewhere, Ash, she suggests. Rendar nods and starts fumbling with the controls. The tension is almost unbearable as seconds tick by. Seconds tick by. Voss braces herself for whatever Thornar's team might find in their absence. The blaster in Rendar's hands feels heavy and cold. A sudden noise outside makes both freeze. It sounds like something has gone wronger. A warning signal, perhaps. Rendar's hands shake as he struggles with the console. Come on, he mutters under his breath. Voss leans closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. I need to move now. Now? Ow! The Dorat's lock whirs loudly as the security feed is finally disabled. Voss and Rendar exchange a tense glance before scrambling out of their hiding spot. They sprint down the corridor, following the faint hum of machinery that might lead them to safety. What if they are too late? Footsteps echo behind them, growing closer with every step. Wow. The air grows thick with the sense of fear as Voss and Rendar dart into a nearby ventilation shaft, dropping through into a cluttered service corridor. I slide through the ventilation shaft, my breath misting in the cool air. Rendar follows close behind, his footsteps muffled by the metal grating. The distant hum of the tide, fighters outside, is a constant reminder of our urgency. Ventilation shafts are monitored for unusual heat signatures. We reach the junction, where the main duct splits into two. I pause to steady my breath and glance at Rendar. Oi, which way? Oh, Seal, I don't know which. I don't broke mirror. I'm Terry and the window. Ah, he asks, his voice low but firm. I points toward the right branch. And in Shingo to the hamlet, I'm Terry. I'm actually my second galactic window. I know you one day. I'm beside Sloan. Oh, at Tatars, where it is our control. Room 214. A sharp noise from below makes us both jump. A pair of stormtroopers rounds a corner, their blaster rifles scanning the shaft. I dive into a shadowy alcove as Rendar takes cover behind a grate. "I'll stay down now," he whispers, his hand on my arm for reassurance. The troopers pass without seeing us, but the sound of their heavy boots echoes ominously. We wait for them to clear before continuing our ascent. I was stumped. Every ventilation shaft is equipped with at least 2 security patrols per shift. We reach control room 214. Just as the door begins to open, I push Rendar inside and pull it shut behind us, my heart pounding in my chest. The room is dimly lit, filled with monitors displaying data on system operations. Rendar pulls out his blaster and aims for a nearby control panel. Erwin, need to shut down the central communications network, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I'll do it quickly, I reply, pressing myself against the wall. The urgency of our mission is overwhelming me, but I cannot afford to show any weakness. Rendar flicks a switch, and the monitors go black, cutting off communication with the outer stations. Now, he says, his voice strained. He checks his watch. 2 minutes have passed since we entered. A communication. Disruptions are classified as Level 1 security breaches. A loud alarm blares through the room, and a red warning light starts flashing on one of the monitors. Yonder, detecting an unauthorized shutdown. Rendar shouts over the noise. I look at him, fear tightening my throat. I'll have to leave now, I say, starting for the door. But before we can move, a stormtrooper bursts into the room, his blaster trained on us. Rendar fires, but the trooper dodges and returns fire. He ducks behind a console and opens fire, his shots ricocheting off the walls. I crouch behind a desk, my heart racing as bullets ping around me. A agent aroused me, and each tray, a blasted maiden, little night chill. They were all male. Rivas, Rendar calls out, his voice urgent. Okay, down. I know girl, and he's sir can't clear. I doubt. At the end of the I dive for cover, just as another shot whizzes past my ear. The trooper's aim is getting worse, but he is not giving up. Security protocols require immediate backup response within 2 minutes of a breach. The air crackles with a burst of energy as the trooper reels from Rendar's second shot. I stand and rush toward him, pulling him to safety behind another console. We need to get out. I whisper, my hands shaking. Rendar nods, his face grim. Not a known tenant area. Let a police set shack municipal or you. He picks up a nearby comm device and presses a button. I repeat, this is an emergency breach. Requesting immediate extraction. Or so, when I don't the next young mail. Ilkan, a voice crackles through the speaker. And I said, not Piani, of Makatara. A response time estimated at 3 minutes. Wow. What under another don't take mile. Proceed with caution. Manchester mailing away. 10 minutes, Cyril. At the rest of a while. Next one, I got 30 minutes. That's ours, all we have. Control room. 214 is designated as high risk due to its proximity to the central command. The seconds seem to drag as I worry about our diminishing odds. As I listen to the troopers outside, their voices growing louder, I realize the gravity of what I've done. We're cut off communication with the outer stations, and now Wa'atra sitting ducks. Aurvos. Rendar says, his voice urgent. I need a way out. Nod, trying to think. There must be another route, but I cannot find it in time. The troopers are closing in, their footsteps echoing off the metal walls. Every breach has an equal chance of being detected by security within minutes. The door shatters just as we turn to run, and a squad of stormtroopers bursts inside. Rendar and I dive for cover, but it turns too late. The troopers are on us in seconds, their blasters firing. Shouts pushing me toward the only escape route left down into another ventilation shaft. I take off, my heart pounding as I scramble down the narrow passage. Behind me, the troopers follow, their boots clattering loudly against the metal grating. Ventilation shafts are not designed for high-speed travel. No, the air is thin and cold as I descend deeper into the bowels of the station. My breath comes in short gasps, but I push on, driven by a desperate need to survive. I hear the troopers closing in, their voices growing louder every second. In communication, disruptions can trigger full-scale security lockdowns within 5 minutes. How long can I stay hidden? The question hangs unanswered as I reach the end of the shaft and find myself in another junction. There is no time to thinker, only to act. I leap down into a different path, my heart racing with every step. Every breach has consequences that ripple through the system. What will happen now? Boss crouches, eyes scanning the ventilation. Shaft doors narrow passage. Rendar's breath comes in harsh, ragged gasps behind him. In the Empire, operates like a machine, every part aligned for efficiency. A sudden jolt of heat from overhead lights reveals stormtroopers closing in. Boss leaps into action, pulling Rendar down just as blaster bolts rain down above them. Keep moving! Boss hisses, pushing Rendar forward. They twist and turn, the air thick with acrid smoke and the metallic tang of sweat. Rendar's leg cramps from the exertion. He stumbles, almost falling into the abyss. Boss grabs him by the arm, holding him back up. Every delay could mean the difference between freedom and capture. Now, Miss Sarah. A door ahead. Whirs shut, cutting off their escape route. The stormtroopers' grunts grow louder as they close in. Boss pulls Rendar to a halt, both of them panting heavily. Can you find another way? Boss asks, voiced barely above a whisper. Rendar nods, scanning the walls for any hidden access panels. He finds one and slides it open, revealing a ladder leading upwards. There's a vent on the other side, he says, his heart pounding. Boss nods, taking the lead as they climb up the narrow ladder. The air grows cooler, and the sound of pursuit fades until it sounds. Nothing but distant echoes. They reach the top, only to find themselves in another ventilation shaft. This one, less crowded. Control is maintained through constant surveillance. Any breach can be swiftly sealed. A flicker of light from a nearby panel draws their attention. Boss pulls out a small communicator and activates it, sending a coded message back to base camp. We're under in position, he murmurs, eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The air grows tense as they wait, the silence broken only by their ragged breathing. While suddenly, a shadow moves across one of the vents above the man. A stormtrooper looking down. Darling, Voss and Rendar duck behind a stack of crates, just as the trooper's blaster fires. A burst of light. The sound echoes in the confined space, and Voss can feel the heat from the blasts on his skin. Voss grabs Rendar's arm and pulls him toward the next vent, whispering urgently, "I'm over." Time is against them here. They navigate through the maze of shafts, their breath visible in the chill air. Man's fever on them rush still air. The stormtrooper south, grunts grow fainter, then silent as they presumably give up on this section. But Vosson's mind races with doubts. What if they misjudged the situation? What if the Empire already knows they're utter here? How long until they find us again? No, I don't go still. Way, their objective remains unclear. Every decision brings them closer to freedom, but also deeper into uncertainty. Voss clung to the cold metal ductwork, his fingers slipping with sweat. Rendar's breath came in short gasps beside him. The Empire's rule is absolute. Every ventilation shaft monitored for descent. Rule. Surveillance extends through all tunnels. A corner of the ductwork groaned under their weight as Voss and Rendar ducked behind a large air filter, heartbeats echoing in the silence. The blaster in Rendar's hand felt heavier now, its cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of his urgency. They needed an escape route before security sealed off this section of the station. Every moment was precious, every breath could be their last. A low drone filled the air, followed by a distant rumble. The stormtroopers were closing in. Voss's communicator crackled softly, but no words came through. They had to act fast. Rendar pointed down a side tunnel. There, maybe we can lose them there. He signaled for Voss to follow. The path twisted and turned, the walls slick with condensation. The air grew colder as they moved deeper into the station's bowels. Rendar adjusted his grip on the blaster. Each sharp turn could be their final obstacle. A sudden jolt of the ductwork caused them both to stumble. Voss's ankle gave way just as a loud mechanical whir filled the tunnel. The stormtroopers had found another access point and were closing in from behind. The ventilation shafts are no longer their only escape. Now they must navigate through active security systems. Rendar signaled for Voss to move faster. "This way," he shouted over the noise, pushing them deeper into the labyrinthine network of airways. The blaster in Rendar's hand felt heavier with each step, its cold metal a grim reminder of their desperate situation. They had to find an escape route before security locked down the station, or they would be trapped in this endless maze of metal and shadow. A thin beam of light flickers through the narrow ventilation shaft, casting eerie shadows on Vossar's face. The rule is clear: no blasters in the vents. They must rely on their wits and agility. Rendar's hand tightens around his blaster, but he knows better than to use it here. A sudden noise from above makes him pause. Stormtroopers have traced their footsteps. Voss shoves Rendar towards a side tunnel, whispering, "Go left, I'll hold them off." The left tunnel leads to a junction. Vossar's communicator crackles to life, but the static is too thick for any clear signal. The station's security systems are already at maximum alert. They have minutes before the locks engage. Rendar hesitates, then follows the path to his right, hoping it will lead to an escape. The air grows thin and stale as he moves deeper into the labyrinthine network of vents. What? A sharp turn reveals a maintenance panel that juts out from the wall. Voss had mentioned these panels could be used for emergency exits. Rendar reaches for the panel, but his fingers slip on the grime. With crisis set, he curses silently, feeling the weight of the stormtroopers closing in. The blaster in his hand is suddenly lighter, almost mocking him. A burst of gunfire from above startles him, and he ducks just in time to avoid a ricochet. With renewed urgency, Render pushes the panel harder. It gives way with a loud scraping noise, revealing a small door. He pulls it open, finds himself in a narrow duct leading outside the station's main hull. The stationer's outer shell is a series of interconnected metal rings, and this duct provided an emergency egress. Rendar peeks out, cautiously. The stormtroopers are still below, their searchlights sweeping across the vents. A faint hum of engines draws his attention to the right arm. Freighters entering the docking bay. If they can reach one without being seen, they might make it off the station. The door creaks behind him as Voss emerges, gasping for breath. "We have to get to a freighter," Rendar says, urgency in his voice. They move quickly, but cautiously, following the ducts until they find an opening that leads directly into one of the cargo bays. Inside, the air is thick with cargo and machinery. A small group of stormtroopers march past, their heads down, unaware of the two fugitives crouched behind a stack of crates. Render signals for Voss to follow him towards the back of the bay. "What is she doing? Otherwise, I'm not going to break your connection. Rest them out, or the docking bay." They need to find a way out before the troopers return or security systems lock them in. They navigate through the maze of cargo and machinery, their hearts pounding with each step. The stationer's systems are tightening their grip. They must act fast. A sudden noise from above startles Render, and he realizes the blaster is still in his hand. The weight now a stark reminder of their desperate situation. With Voss by his side, Render makes a final push towards an opening that leads to the outer hull. The stationer's locks are almost engaged. They have seconds before they are trapped for good. The door creaks as it swings open, revealing a narrow exit into space. They step out, the cold vacuum of the void pulling at their suits. Render and Voss float out into the vastness, their hearts pounding with relief and fear. But just as they think they have escaped, a Shepard light blips on in the distance. Another Imperial patrol. Their chances of making it to safety are now slim. The stationer's locks engage, sealing them in for good. "Mark Jantango." "Good luck," Voss whispers, as they drift apart, his voice barely audible over the static of their communicator. Rendar looks back at the station, its lights dimming like a dying star. "You should make a dying star." Rendar's voice trails off as his hope fades with every second that ticks by. Voss's hand tightens around Rendar's arm as they tumble through the dark shaft. Voss pulls Rendar towards a narrow, barely visible gap in the wall. "Follow me," he whispers urgently. "Nakanayo, down into the signal, the shot at the idea, nicely range to every whale." The security systems are locked down, making every step precarious and silent. They squeeze into the tiny gap, just as a thunderous explosion rocks the station, sending debris showering past them. The communicator in Rendar's pocket slips out of his hand and falls into the abyss below. Now, they must find it before the stormtroopers do. And hope Vossad's training can keep them alive, long enough to escape. Voss peered around the corner, his breath catching as Rendar pointed out a stormtrooper squad patrolling the corridor. "Stay low," Voss whispered, pressing against the wall. "The rule is simple. Silence." Rendar nodded, crouching beside Voss. "And he stood a link down." They needed to find their communicator before the Empire's grip tightened further. The last one they had lost in this sector of the station was critical for coordinating their escape. A sudden noise from above drew them both up. A door slid open with a hiss, and a pair of Imperial officers entered, their steps echoing in the empty corridor. Every communication device is monitored, or signaled Rendar to follow him as they ducked into a nearby supply closet. The troopers passed by, without noticing them, their focus on a holoscreen displaying security protocols. As soon as they were out of sight, Voss pulled out his own communicator and checked the screen. Control is maintained through constant surveillance. The display showed multiple red alerts. Communications had been compromised in other sectors too. Panic surged within him. This was bigger than just their personal loss. If the Empire could intercept communications, it meant their network might be under broader attack. Broader attack. They needed to act fast. Voss and Renda hurried down another corridor, their hearts pounding as they dodged patrols. The communicator's screen flickered with static as a new message came in. All units proceed to Sector 7 for immediate containment. Containment means capture or death. But it's soon, when Roger Clara, watching down to the Rasi, or Bennett 1, or Rasi God, and Tacey. Their path was blocked by a reinforced door, but Voss remembered the hidden switch near the maintenance panel on the wall. With a swift motion, he flipped it, and the door hissed open, revealing a small vent that led deeper into the Stationar's underbelly. They dived inside, just as troopers burst through the door. The narrow crawl space was claustrophobic, but their only chance for safety lay in moving quickly. Voss's grip on the communicator tightened as seconds ticked by. Every breach is punished. The vent opened up into a small chamber, where they could see a row of consoles and several stormtroopers standing guard. Voss knew they couldn't outstay here. They needed to find their communicator before the troopers moved out. Go, he whispered, pushing Renda forward as he activated his own communicator. I will distract them. Renda nodded, slipping into the main corridor while Voss stepped out, just as a trooper turned around. Voss quickly flicked the communicator switch and watched as it emitted a high-pitched whine before shutting down completely. Troopers swarmed towards him, their blaster bolts flying past his head. He ran for the chamber, where Renda was waiting. The communicator lay on a desk, still silent. Renda grabbed it from Voss's hand. We need to get out of here, he said, pulling Voss back into the vent. The Empire is everywhere. Arch 7. 1. Me. They emerged in another corridor and sprinted towards their escape pod. At what? The sound of approaching footsteps echoed behind them, growing louder with each second. Come on! Gnomes! Rendar yelled as they reached the pod and scrambled inside. The door sealed, shut just as troopers burst through the wall. Every breach must be contained. The pod's engines whined to life, and they were lifted away from the station, leaving behind the hiss of stormtrooper boots on metal floors. As they rose into space, Voss felt a chill in his bones. What if their escape was too late? Voss and Rendar crouched behind a dented bulkhead, breaths shallow as they listened for the distant clank of boots. The communicator is just ahead, but every corridor is crawling with stormtroopers. The Empire's security protocol mandates constant surveillance. Any breach must be contained swiftly. Rendar gestures for Voss to stay low and follows him down a narrow service duct. The air hums with the Stationars. Life support systems, their lights flickering ominously. They reach the junction where the communicator is last known to Ba, now hidden by maintenance crates. Just as they start to move in, heavy footsteps thud nearby. Stay here, Voss whispers, pressing Rendar against a bulkhead and slipping away into the shadows. The troopers move past, their boots echoing off the metal. Voss returns, heart pounding, to find the communicator's frequency has been jammed out, likely by an Imperial patrol just now passing through. Without it, they're exposed. Any movement will attract attention. They must find a way around, or risk being caught. How long can they keep silent in this sea of eyes? Wall. Voss crouches against the cold metal wall of the service duct, his breath visible in the chill air. Rendar presses himself close by, both men tense and silent. The communicator's jamming frequency is a constant hum, making their location impossible to pinpoint. After what feels like an eternity, Voss signals for them to move. "We need to find another route," he whispers, his voice barely above a murmur. They emerge into a larger cargo bay, the air thick with dust and stale odors. The sound of approaching footsteps echoes through the cargo bay, signaling the stormtroopers' imminent arrival. Voss leads Rendar down a series of catwalks, avoiding the main pathways where troopers patrol. He knows every inch of this station, every blind corner they can hide in. The comm is in Sector 7. He says urgently, "I know what we're doing, right, and but we have to be quick." "Well, Imperial, I need so, I wanted to action, wish to be radical, after near." Rendar nods, his face pale under the dim lights. What if it's too late? "Medbro, when I saw our stare." His voice carries a hint of fear. "Then we fight our way out," Voss replies grimly. They slip into an air vent and crawl through until they reach Sector 7, their hearts pounding in sync with each other's breath. The comm is there, but the jamming frequency is too strong for them to override it from this distance. Voss reaches for a nearby utility tool, his fingers trembling slightly as he fumbles with the device. "I need you to distract," he says, looking at Rendar intently. "Mendo, Nishan." Rendar hesitates, then nods. He moves towards an open hatch where troopers are talking. Their voices muffled but clear enough to hear. "They're coming this way," he whispers back. Voss uses the tool to disrupt the jamming signal, just long enough for them to grab the communicator and slip away. They run, the air vent too small. They must switch to the main corridor. "I said no, I want you down down." Now switch to the main corridor. A trooper suddenly spots Rendar. "Stop, Mr. Mercury. Rush out in a chill. What much?" the soldier yells, raising his blaster. Rendar freezes, whilst pulling him down into a pile of crates, just as the shot rings out. What? Metal scrapes against metal. The blaster fire hits the crates, but they dodge it narrowly. They burst from their hiding spot, Voss leading the way through a narrow gap between two massive machinery units. The troopers are closing in, and Rendar stumbles, his foot catching on something sharp. "Stay down," Voss yells, pulling him back as they hear the troopers approach with heavy footsteps. The communicator is theirs, but their escape route is now compromised. They must improvise, or risk capture. "We need to get through that vent over there," Voss says, pointing to a larger opening. "Quickly." Quickly, they dive into the vent and begin to descend, hearts racing as the troopers continue to search the area. The Empire's control is tight. Any breach needs to be swift. As they reach the end of the vent, Voss feels a sudden jolt that makes him lose his balance. The vent door slams shut, trapping them inside. "Rendar, we are stuck," he says, panic rising. The troopers are closing in on their last known position. Voss knows they have seconds to escape before they're caught. "We need to break this door," he says, digging through his pack for a tool. Their fate hangs in the balance as the troopers grow louder outside the vent. What will happen when they find them? Voss and Rendar crouch in the narrow duct, their breaths mingling with the hiss of air. The stormtroopers are only moments away. "I should say the Imperial protocol is clear. Any breach must be contained swiftly. They cannot afford a disturbance. Rendar pulls out the communicator, its surface cold under his fingers. With a practiced motion, he presses it against Voss's ear and taps in a quick code to override the jamming frequency. The troopers are just outside now, their boots echoing in the metal corridor. Rendar shifts, his heart pounding as he prepares for the worst. With a final glance at the communicator, Voss signals to Rendar. "Why?" They squeeze through the gap, their bodies scraping against the rough surface of the duct. The door clicks open with a mechanical whine. They are out into the main corridor, stormtroopers closing in from all sides. Renderar's eyes scan the area for an escape route as Voss grabs his arm and pulls him towards a service panel. They dive behind it just as the troopers burst into view. Marching on, the doctor, much they see, now the communicator's override frequency is now active. Their only hope to communicate with anyone outside this station. But the stormtroopers are too close. Rendar feels Voss's hand near his face, and hears the urgent whisper. Do you see a way? Rendar nods, his eyes fixed on a small air vent high above them. With a swift motion, he grabs a nearby tool and starts to pry open the vent. Through there on, Rendar says, his voice barely audible over the stormtrooper shouts. Shout! Oi! Cannon fits. Tell Carl. One's in fits. Osal. Dr. Menadran. Voss's heart races as he assesses their chances. The vent is small, but they might be able to squeeze through if they move fast. With a nod, Voss pushes himself up and into the narrow opening. Menashel, Kartlansi, named the Dorbarkling Reinshida. The air currents are strong, but he manages to grab hold of Rendar's arm just before his body is pulled too far in. Rendar follows his muscles straining as he squeezes through the tight space. Myrnin, whine. Once inside, they lie still, listening for any sign of the stormtroopers. The communicator crackles alive, a faint signal amidst the chaos of the station. But it might be their only chance to send an alert before they are caught. But I stay here. Voss whispers as he fumbles with the communicator, trying to get a clear transmission. Rendar watches him intently, his eyes wide with fear and determination. The Imperial protocol demands quick action. Any breach must be contained. Voss's fingers twitch as he presses the transmit button. But before he can speak, the vent door opens and stormtroopers flood in. Voss crouches behind a service panel. Rendaros, breath hot in his ear. Anyone, Mochimakapo. Voss activates the communicator, sending a rapid series of distress signals. After now, Mindler, and don't lose. The vent whirs loudly as it hums to life, drawing stormtroopers closer by design. The Empire uses advanced signal jammers to prevent unauthorized communication within its stations. Ensuring complete control over information flow, the vent door grinds open, and a pair of stormtroopers peer inside. Voss and Rendar freeze, listening as the troopers' boots thud away down the corridor. What if they don't make it out in time? Voss crouched behind the grated vent, his breath shallow as Rendar fidgeted beside him. The Imperial search party had just passed by. The Galactic Empire functions through meticulous planning and relentless oversight. Ronda's eyes darted nervously, his hand trembling near Voss's communicator. Dutchno, the jammers ensured. No signal could escape. If they were found, it would be a swift end, but if they slipped away... Mandeboil, Artio, Unevendestera. Einstein Quintone, not rash. Voss whispered urgently. Do not touch the comm, Rendar. We need to stay silent. Rendar nodded, his fingers curling into fists. They had been here for hours, hidden in this ventilation system, their only hope slipping through the Empire's tight grip. Every sector is monitored by Imperial surveillance drones and ground troops. A sudden noise made them freeze. Footsteps echoed closer. Achen rested around Nandabar, and the Cardijo. Voss tightened his grip on a nearby tool, ready to act if needed. The search party was getting too close. Stay down, he murmured harshly, his voice hoarse from lack of use. The footsteps stopped just outside their vent opening. Mr. Anicho, Reinetwell, and Mr. out. A moment stretched into an eternity, as Voss and Rendar held their breaths. Then the Imperial boots retreated. Moisture in Barna, no I doubt, right but need still, now the net. Voss exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. But it was short-lived. The jammers meant they could never alert anyone to their predicament or plan a new escape route. They were on their own, cut off from all support. Without external aid, every decision must be made within the limited resources available. Rundar's eyes flicked around, his gaze landing on a loose vent cover. He hesitated for a moment, before nodding determinedly and reaching out to pry it open. Voss watched with growing concern as Rendar's fingers worked at the seam. "Be careful," Voss warned, but there was no time to argue. The Imperial presence was too close for comfort. Rendar managed to crack the vent, just enough, his fingers slipping inside. He poked around, looking for anything that could help them escape. His hand brushed against something metallic, and he pulled it out on, a small, flat device with strange markings on its surface. "What is that?" Rendar asked, holding up the object, hesitantly. Voss's heart raced. "Do not touch it," he said, but his voice was weak. They needed to understand what this could be, or risk discovery. Rendar hesitated, then slowly examined the device. It seemed harmless enough. He pressed a button on its side, and it lit up with an eerie blue light. "Boss, look at this," Rendar called out, holding it aloft. The blue light flared brighter, and Voss squinted against the sudden brightness. The vent cover began to vibrate slightly, as if being manipulated by some unseen force. He realized with a chill that whatever this device was, it had access to their ventilation system. In a ventilation system. Every tool within the Empire has its purpose. Before they could react, a loud crack echoed through the vents. The loose cover detached from its mounting and crashed down, blocking their only escape route. Voss and Rendar froze, staring at each other in horror as they realized the device had compromised their hiding spot. "Great," Voss muttered, his voice strained. "Now what?" The unanswered danger lingered like a spectre, hanging heavy in the air between them. Voss's breath comes out in white puffs as he crouches near Rendar. The vent whirs to life, and a beam of light sweeps across the grated floor. Voss and Rendar tense up, holding their breath. The Imperial protocol requires thorough inspections. Any deviation from standard procedures means increased scrutiny. The light pauses directly above them, then moves on. A moment later, another vent grating drops down, blocking their path. Panic surges through Voss as he realizes they're trapped. Could this device be part of some larger, sinister plan? Voss and Rendar clung to the cool metal of the ventilation. Great, their breaths barely audible. The search party had passed just moments ago, but Voss could still feel the heat from their lightsabers as they swept through. The mysterious device hummed softly beside them, its purpose still a mystery. Suddenly, a low whirring noise filled the air, and the vents began to move with a force Voss hadn't anticipated. The grated floor shifted upwards, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. They were trapped. "Rendar," Voss hissed. "What do we do?" Rendar glanced at the device, then back at Voss. "If it's part of an escape plan, this might be our only chance." He reached for the control panel, fingers trembling as he pressed a button. The vents continued to move, but now they were heading deeper into the facility. Approaching footsteps echoed outside their vent, growing louder with each passing second. Voss's heart pounded in his chest as they waited for the inevitable discovery. "Whatever this is," Rendar whispered, "it's not what I expected." A shadow passes over the grated floor, vent, as footsteps grow louder. I grip Rendar's arm tighter, my heart pounding against his back. The mysterious device hums beneath us, its rhythmic pulse growing more insistent. "Stay quiet," I whisper. Though we both know it haunts a futile plea, A trooper's flashlight flickers above, casting dancing shadows on the walls. We cannot afford to be seen. The beam of light narrows, passing just inches from where our heads should be. Renda and I exchange a terrified glance before the vent. Grating rumbles again. The device must have triggered. It hums louder now, pulsing with an almost alive energy. A trooperon's boot thuds against the floor outside, followed by another. They are getting closer. Panic surges through me as the urgency of our situation sinks in. We are stuck here, unable to communicate or escape. Boss, we need to find a way out. Renda's voice is low and urgent. This devicer, what if it harms part of some larger system? How much of this place does it control? We don't have time for speculation, I hiss back. Pack. Focus on finding a different vent. The trooper saw. Footsteps draw nearer, the humming in my ears growing louder. Suddenly, the grate shifts again, causing Renda to stumble and knock into me. We both freeze as the trooperos. Light sweeps across our hiding spots once more. Quick, I urge, tugging him towards another set of vents. This way. Rendar follows his movements, hesitant but steady. The device's humming is now a deafening roar, overwhelming my senses and making it hard to think. As we squeeze through the smaller vent, the trooperos light passes us by. We emerge into a different section of the facility, our location changing abruptly. Renda and I press ourselves against the wall as more footsteps approach from behind. The device's humming grows even louder, almost painful in its intensity. Is it guiding us? Renda asks, his voice barely audible over the noise. I shake my head, unable to speak. Unable to speak. Our path forward is still unclear. The trooperon's light passes overhead again, but this time we make a daring move, ducking into another vent before they can spot us. The device's humming follows us, its tone shifting and intensifying as it guides our movements. We are caught in a trap, forced to navigate through the Empire's labyrinthine systems, with no control over where or when. I wonder if anyone else is being manipulated this way. If the Empire's grip on power is built upon such subtle, insidious mechanisms. The trooperon's light finally passes us by, and we continue our silent flight into the unknown depths of the facility. Could there be others like us, caught in a web, woven from the very air we breathe? Boss and Rendar crouch silently as footsteps grow louder above. The device's hum intensifies, making their ears ache. One Imperial Protocol. One session that when the count animates in unlikable. Every facility has a primary control station, and this vent system is no exception. The humming device must be connected to it somehow. A trooperon's flashlight flickers just inches from the grated floor, and Bus and Rendar freeze hearts pounding. Every search party reports back to headquarters via encrypted signal. If they can disrupt that connection, they might evade capture. And don't do well. Renda gestures for Voss to follow, as he maneuvers closer to a junction where two vents merge. The device hums louder, almost painfully now. They must act fast before it starts too late. Voss nods, drawing his blaster carefully from its holster. Rendar activates the device, and the vent grate begins to rumble open. They slip through, just as troopers converge at the junction. The grate closes behind them, sealing their fatale, so they hope. The device's humming grows more urgent, like a ticking time bomb. If we can find the control station, a burst of laser fire shatters the vent wall opposite them. Troopers pour in, weapons raised. Voss and Rendar share a desperate look. The device hum crescendos into a deafening roar, as if trying to warn them. Whatever it is, it wants to get out time, or stop them from getting out. He demands, "What are you doing here?" The trooper in charge barks orders at his men. "Find them, one in your well." Ross and Rendar huddled deeper into the vent system, their escape route now sealed by the device's mysterious control. Ross and Rendar race to locate the control panel, knowing time is running out and failure means becoming the Empire's next test subject. The humming grows louder, as if sensing their fear. What does it want, and what happens when it gets free? Cold open line, 25 words. Ross felt the walls vibrating as troopers moved closer. I crept through the narrow vent, my fingers brushing against cold metal. The device's hum grew louder, a relentless drone that sent shivers down my spine. Rendar's flashlight flickered once, then went out, leaving us in darkness. Rule sentence, one sentence. In the Imperial system, every alarm must be addressed. Failure to do so results in immediate containment and interrogation. We listened intently for any sound. The silence stretched on, until a heavy boot thudded outside our vent. Troopers were searching below us. I signaled Rendar with a squeeze of his arm. He nodded, his eyes reflecting the dim light from my own flashlight. We sprinted through the vents, the device's hum growing more intense. The seconds stretched into agonizing moments as we neared the junction leading to the control station. Rule sentence, one new rule. Control stations are the nerve centers. Disrupting them is a capital offense. The troopers below began shouting and banging on the vent cover. We had to move faster, but the device's hum intensified, suggesting it was about to activate. Panic surged through me, but I focused, urging Rendar forward. Final sentence, 15R, 25 words. What would happen when the device activated? The unknown purpose hung heavy in my mind. As we raced toward our only chance of escape, I vaulted over a narrow gap, feeling Rendar's hand grip my shoulder as we both slid into a deeper section of the vent. The hum of the device intensified, a steady, relentless drone echoing through the metal conduits. The protocols ensure all vents are monitored every hour, I thought grimly, recalling a rule that bit now with deadly accuracy. Rounds of Imperial troopers emerged from nearby junctions, their flashlights dancing along the walls. We needed to reach the control station before they sealed off this section completely. We pressed forward, my heart pounding in sync with the device's hum. Rendar and I moved like shadows, our breaths barely audible over the noise. Suddenly, a trooper appeared ahead, his flashlight sweeping our direction. "Stop," he barked, raising his blaster. I signaled to Rendar to duck into a side vent, as more troopers emerged from other junctions. We had to get past them unnoticed. Rendar and I squeezed through a tight space, the air growing thin. The trooper in front of us hesitated, then turned away, dismissing us as scrapers in his sector. We emerged on the opposite side, the control station now just ahead. I rushed towards it, my fingers fumbling for the lock. With a click, the door opened, revealing a console humming with red lights and blinking warnings. I quickly accessed the override protocol and initiated the disruption sequence. The hum grew to a deafening roar as the device's power faltered. We had just enough time to secure the station before it went critical. But then troopers burst through the door, weapons raised. Rendar and I exchanged a desperate glance, knowing we were trapped. "Run!" he shouted, pulling me towards an emergency hatch. I pushed open the hatch as troopers stormed in, blaster fire erupting around us. We dived down into the darkness of another vent, the device's final hum fading behind us. Will the escape pods still function after this signal disruption? I wondered, my breath ragged and heart racing. Wow, the silence that followed was chilling, a prelude to the unknown dangers we faced ahead. I leaped over a trooper's prone body, grabbing Rendar by the arm, as we dashed toward the control station. The device's hum filled the air as we raced against time toward the control station. Render yanked out his blaster, eyes wide with fear. What are they doing here so quickly? Imperial protocols, I spat, focusing on our task. We had to override the signal quickly. I activated the override protocol, a single sentence of code that would silence the device's transmission. The troopers swarmed us, weapons raised. Render opened fire, but the troopers were already upon us. Wary. Mostly mirrors. A dozen soldiers surrounded us, their blasters trained on our chests. I hit the emergency hatch release, and the door hissed open, just as the troopers zeroed in. Get in, I shouted to Rendar, pushing him inside before following myself. The escape pods were seconds away from launch. We had to make it. The hatch slammed shut, cutting off my view of the chaos outside. Rendar's breathing was ragged, panic seeping into his voice. What do they want with us? They want what we have, I replied, pressing a button that activated the override sequence. The screen flickered, and the hum began to fade. Just as the escape pod launched, troopers breached the vent system outside, their boots pounding against the metal walls. We had only seconds before they reached us. Well, winner, Wara, Pandaburko, and now track. The pod's external lights blinked once, then twice up. Our signal was gone. With a final burst of speed, I hit the eject button. The hatch opened, and we were flung into space. I clutched Rendar as the pod began its descent, but the trooper's pursuit was relentless. Did it work? He gasped, looking at me through the helmet's visor. I couldn't answer. My mind raced with thoughts of Imperial protocol and the unknown consequences of our actions. The pod jolted as we landed on an abandoned planet, but the danger wasn't over yet. Troopers would find us here soon too. We had interrupted one signal, but there were countless others across the Empire. How many more did they have in place? And what was the true purpose of this device? Massing round, my hands no line, and necessarily down line. Nigo would see. I looked at Rendar, my heart pounding with both relief and dread. What do you think they wanted from us? He whispered back, his eyes filled with questions. The pod door hissed open, revealing a desolate landscape. Behind it, more troopers moved silently through the dust, closing in on our escape. I twisted through the narrow vent, Rendar's flashlight barely cutting through the darkness. The device's hum grew louder, echoing through the vent like a dying alarm. Rendar hit the override protocol button, and the lights flickered around us. A series of clicks and whirs filled the space as we waited for confirmation. Come on, he whispered, his voice steady but strained. We need to get out before our... A trooper's boots thudded against the vent floor below. We froze, hearts pounding. Override protocol. Engaged, a voice crackled through the intercom. All personnel to emergency stations. Render and I looked at each other, our eyes wide with dread. The hatch above was closing as troopers began their search. There were 5 of them, and only 2 escape pods. We had no time for hesitation. Split up, Rendar hissed. Rendar started toward the door. I got to the pod and disabled the device from there. I'll cover you, I said, my hand on the emergency release lever. Just make it to the pod. Rendar nodded, then slipped into the vent slots below. Into the vent slots below. His body disappeared as the hatch sealed shut behind him. I rushed back towards the main vents, where the escape pods were hidden. The device's hum was now a deafening scream, and troopers were shouting orders down here. I pulled out my utility knife, cutting through the cables that held the pod open. As I reached for the activation switch, a trooper burst into the vent, his blaster trained on me. "Drop it!" he yelled. I threw myself back, hitting the wall hard and knocking the air from my lungs. The trooper's boot connected with my chest, sending pain searing through my ribs. He pulled out his weapon, aiming for the pod. Aiming for the pod. "Stop!" a new voice called from behind him. Rendar heard a voice call out. "Doubts, Commander, boss?" The trooper turned to face Rendar, who had emerged from the vents below, his blaster drawn and ready. I scrambled towards the pod, fingers fumbling on the switch. "Activate it!" Rendar shouted over the chaos. "Now!" "No, wizard. One down, one down." I flipped the switch, and the pod hummed to life. The door closed with a metallic click as the trooper fired blindly at us. My heart pounded in my ears as we hit the launch sequence. The pod began its descent towards the surface. I glanced back just in time to see the troopers' futile attempts to stop it. Their shouts and blaster fire faded into the distance, swallowed by the planet's rugged terrain. I settled into the pilotor's seat, the hatch sealing behind me as we plummeted towards the ground. The escape podos. Systems hummed with a reassuring rhythm, but my mind raced. What had that device been for? Midreich, Achinishnut. The troopers looked around, unsure of their next move. The pod landed in a cloud of dust and gravel, jolting to a stop. I pushed open the hatch, stepping out into the harsh sunlight. Rendar was already beside me, his face bruised and battered but alive. "Let's get moving," he said, his voice hoarse. "We need to find a way off this planet." As we started to leave, the device's hum resumed and intensified with every passing moment. Its purpose remained a mystery,